Hello, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about another piece of the collection that has a little bit of a unique story. The piece is actually a piece of the teak decking that came off of the USS Oklahoma. Now, there was a considerable amount of damage that was done to all the battleships, and the ones that they were able to repair. The process was quite lengthy at being able to get those ships repaired and getting them back into sea service. And as you might imagine, after the attack was over with, the number of servicemen and contractors that came to the island was tremendous. And one of the issues that they had at the very outset was being able to house these people. There was just not enough housing on the base to be able to house everyone. And so there was contractors that came in for that purpose to be able to build new housing, to be able to accommodate all the soldiers and sailors and Marines that were going to be coming through in order to go to the war that was going to be ongoing out in the Pacific. And there was also the construction crews that came in to be able to work on those disabled ships that were in the harbor, in order to be able to get them back in working order, to be able to get them back in the fight. And that was very important because it took a long time to build a ship from scratch, and it was much easier for them to take the ships that had been damaged and to be able to repair them and put them back in service and get them out back out to sea. And that was an ongoing effort that took place for many months after the attack occurred. One of the individuals that came into the islands sometime after the attack, I think he actually arrived in October of 1942, was Jack Newcomb. And Jack Newcomb was a young man who was a member of the 16th Naval Construction Battalion, better known as the Seabees. And the group that he was with had been brought in to take over the work on restoration and reconstruction of the USS West Virginia. They had been, some civilian contractors had been working on the ship, but they had been falling behind on the dates that they had been wanting to get certain things done to the ship to get it back seaworthy, and so they brought the 16th Construction Battalion in to help out with that process and to get the work done much faster. And so Jack was involved with a lot of that work that was being done on the West Virginia. And during that same period of time, while he was working on the West Virginia, not too far away was the process of righting the USS Oklahoma. And that took several months for them to be able to, and it was a very complicated process in which that they used cables and different kind of levers in order to be able to right that ship, to get it back upright, and to be able to see if they could salvage the ship, which they were not able to do. And they also had the process of removing the bodies of all the sailors that were still trapped inside. It was during that time that that Jack Newcomb was working on the West Virginia, and that the Oklahoma was being righted, that he managed to get a piece of the teak decking off of the Oklahoma. Most of all the teak decking was removed because it was so far damaged, and the ship was in such bad condition, having been underwater for several months. They removed basically all the teak decking. Most of it was, discarded, but he was able to get a piece of that. It wasn't too awful unusual for teak decking from some of the ships, even the Arizona, to be taken, and then it was reworked into something and given to officers or some dignitaries as kind of a souvenir, something to have from those vessels. And but Jack did something a little different with his, and it was how that he applied what he had done. Jack was one of those who, he and some of his other servicemen from the 16th, was actually housed in a private home. There was, like I said, there was not enough housing for everyone, and so many people in the islands opened their homes up to some of these servicemen to be able to stay at private homes so that they would have somewhere decent to stay. And so Jack and two of his fellow Seabees were actually living in a private home on the island, and so they wanted to do something kind of special for the owner of the home. And so they took this piece of teak decking and they made it into a cribbage game. And they included a deck of cards, and they had a piece of a slide that was actually a bomb slide from one of the B-17 bombers off of the base at Hickam. And they combined those two and added the deck of cards and put a plaque on this as a presentation to the owner from the home, and being from the three guys from the 16th in appreciation for him sharing his home with them during their time there. And like I said, it's not so unusual, the fact that someone had taken something like the teak decking and made something out of it. What was unusual in this case, and what you will see when you see the actual exhibit of this, Jack left the deck as it was and didn't really do much refining to it. He used the good side, which was actually the underneath, for the actual cribbage game itself, but he left the burnt side on the back. And so it's very much charred on the other side and blackened from fire. And that was unusual. Typically, at that time when they were making something out of, they removed all that and they would polish them down and make them where that they were a very refined piece, sometimes almost like a piece of art, or that they had carved, made something out of it very special. But his is just a cut piece of the decking, and the cribbage game is on one side, and the strong reminder of the attack being on the other side with the charred, burnt side of the top deck. And so that is the unique piece about this, or the unique part about this piece that is on display, and tells a whole lot of the story of the attack on Pearl Harbor and the destruction and loss of life on the USS Oklahoma.